Okay, so I know a big question a lot of new instructors have is how to set up CATME. So you'll go to catme.org. You will most likely have to request an instructor account if you don't already have one. If you have one, great. You can still follow the rest of this. If you don't, do this, and please do this as soon as possible because it can take a day or two to get it. We're going to go ahead and log in. Hopefully my password works. Okay, so you may get this message, which is slightly annoying, to update your password, but go ahead and do that if you haven't used it for a while. I think they require it once a year to update. Yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and save. So if it asks you to do that, that's great. Otherwise, you'll normally get a screen like this, and we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pretend to set one up. I'm not teaching a 134, but we're gonna go ahead and pretend to set this up. So the first thing we want to do is come up here to create class. So once you create a class, everything will go within that container. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. I'm going to put in a name for my class. I usually put in the course name, or the course, like 4 letters and the number, and then the semester, as well as the section number. So let's say, I'm just going to say fall 2020, JMC 134. I'm just going to call this test because this is more for you guys than for me to actually do this. And then you'll set the term, the type. It really doesn't matter what you call it. It's arbitrary. Make sure to your time zone. It'll default to Eastern because this is they're on Eastern time. So go ahead and look for Central time. So that you make sure you're on Central. It's important because otherwise, like if you set a deadline, it'll be an hour early if you leave it on Eastern. Go ahead and click next. And there's just enable lecture messages. Yeah, just go ahead, click that, click done. So hopefully separately I have the instructions written out for how to get your class list and how to format it. I'm not going to go through that here because those are pretty self-explanatory if you follow them. If you are having issues with that, let me know. So go ahead and click add activity, and I'm just going to click through. So the first time we're going to select team maker. Later on you're going to be doing peer evaluation. So I'm going to go ahead and select team maker. Again, name it. So let's say I'll just call it team maker survey. Whatever you want to call it is fine. Set dates then. So set a clear deadline and then follow that. I'm just going to set a future date so I don't accidentally, I can delete this hopefully before that becomes an issue. And then an end date. And then I don't usually do practice for the maker one. It's pretty self-explanatory. But I will do it later for the evaluation. And then here you can limit entry to just once. I usually don't do that in case they're flaky and need to change something. That way I don't have to constantly do it. Then under activity content, so what I check, because I think this is useful, and I actually did the class with the guy who made this, who went into detail about why to pick what you're picking. So gender and race, and I will preface this, we've had not so much with the gender question, but the race question, that students were like, why are you asking this? Well, from meeting with the gentleman who made this, when you actually form teams, you don't want to ever isolate either one gender so that they're the only one on the team, or like somebody like, so there's only one non-white person on a team, because that tends to marginalize them. So we've had in the past students complain and think that we're doing something with that. we're not gathering the data for any reason. B, we're doing it more in their favor so that we can keep them from being isolated and we can keep them from being outnumbered. With the gender card, weirdly, a team of 4 women and 1 man is usually fine, but a team of 4 men and 1 woman has been extremely problematic if you're not careful with that. So it's more for the fact that we want to make sure that we have balanced teams and that no one is singled out based on those items. And obviously you have the potential that some class you just can't avoid it, but do your best. Schedule, that is extremely important to me because it will actually match people who are available at the same times. Weekend meetings, commute maybe not an issue, but might be more of an issue this semester. Again, on-campus, off-campus jobs aren't really used in the team calculation. They're just good information to know sometimes. Like, they can help you from your end if you're trying to make some decisions and finesse teams. It might be good to know. Class year is helpful, and age. So we don't do major because their major is really generalized. So we have a specific one later on that says co-JMC major, and I'll show you how to get that question because it doesn't come up by default. It's something you have to add. But things like sports, fraternity, sorority, again, just good information. They don't weigh heavily into team calculations for me. Big picture and detail oriented can be useful. So can leadership preference and leadership role. Commitment level is good to know. And then software, English, and writing skills are all checked, and later on it'll ask you to fill in on that. So that's kind of the biggest ones that I like to use. I could also see the potential for some of you to make your own custom question about, like, are you on campus or off campus this semester, or what time zone you're in. That's up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and click next, but you could also edit the activity intro. I don't have an issue with that. So now is where you want to import the list. Oops. Helps if I actually press browse first. And I pulled an old list. I'm going to click import. So it's going to bring everybody in. It says student ID, but I don't think it's actually their student ID. And then it's going to take their email. Most likely it is their Huskers email, especially in the fall before everyone's refigured stuff. If they fuss about using it, just point out that it is university policy. The other issue you'll run into is they log into their email and they will see off on the top right something that totally doesn't match what's here. That is not their email address. They will argue with you up and down one way. They are always wrong. And so just reference this. If you continue to have any issues, send them to me because I can usually demonstrate. They've normally just misplaced it. They can always go and put in this email address and say forgot password to reset their password. You'll run into those issues, especially later on. They'll forget what their password was. So when I press next, this is where we put in the Adobe Creative Cloud part. I'm going to go ahead and next. And then, like, for example, I've had to do this in the past because an instructor couldn't get access. So I set up their survey and sent it out, and I delegated them as an instructor later on so that they could access the information. But the most of you shouldn't have to do this. Hit next. It's pending. Just ignore that. Hit next. They're working it out. Don't worry about it. So congratulations, you've set up the survey. We're gonna, you can say done, go to activity editor. We can also save and return. So this will show you what you set up. If you ever have to add someone, you can come back to this point and edit students or add individuals. So let's say your class didn't have a full 20, but in the first week you get someone, you can go there, So we can go ahead and save and return to the class editor, and this will show us how many have completed it. Once this deploys, and I'm gonna have to delete it hopefully, there'll be buttons next to here, and one allows you to view information, the other one will allow you to like resend the survey. So usually what I do is daily I look at the percentages and hit the resend, and it only resends the notification to people who have not completed it. So people who have completed it don't get it. I find annoying people pretty effective. So yeah, and we're gonna save and return to quick summary. Okay, so now that's in there. We see my old one, but this one is showing up. I can see results from former ones is also in the option. Oh, let me show older than 6 months. So it's taking a second here. Because I want to pull up a former one for you guys to look at. So this was the actual spring one. So let's go in here again, see those students. So view data in Teams. I'm going to go up to there. So this is already in Teams, but let's say I actually needed to make Teams just for reference. Just a few things to look at too before we do that. So you'll see one of these until you finalize it. I've saved these teams, so they're committed to the system, and you want to make sure to save teams once you're happy with them. Things I really look at, obviously looking at balance of gender and ethnicity. Also, the one that's most important to me though is schedule. Looking at, so it looks at 2-hour blocks. I like to find at least 2 days a week where they have at least 2 hours that they can get together. Given it's on reported data, so sometimes, they put when they want to be available and not when they are. And occasionally you'll get students who will mark themselves 80% busy, which I call BS on. You'll just have to, those ones are always hard to match, but you notice all my teams have at least 3 days a week together. And then you can see the rest of the data and information to make determinations. But if you're gonna, let's say I was gonna remake teams, I'm gonna click on this, and it actually goes through and can give you process. I can also change the parameters that I use for this. So looking at this, yours will normally take you first to here. So with gender, I put don't outnumber. With race, don't outnumber. Schedule, group similar, so it really looks to match that. With weekend meetings, I don't ignore it, but really minimize. Commute, job, that type of thing, I ignore. Class share, it's not high priority, but I push it towards the dissimilar. Age doesn't really matter to me, it's just a good reference point. Software skills, I want to group dissimilar. English skills, I also want to do that so that we get a range of skill sets. Same with writing skills. Commitment level, I tend to err towards similar. Leadership role, dissimilar, because people who want to follow versus want to lead. Leadership preference, though, I ignore. Big picture, I usually ignore. It's just helpful for me to see. Sorority and sports. Major, I especially want, though, dissimilar. So that gives you an idea. I'm just going to actually cancel now, but normally you'll click make teams. It'll process and it'll give you that list. I don't want to disrupt my existing class. I'm actually a little afraid people are going to go. And make sure the maximum team size is 5. We want 4 teams of 5. Going back to the team maker survey, view data in teams. So once you have teams you like, you want to save it so that it will use these teams to do the other activities. So it's really important you do that. I also want to just come back and return. We're going to cancel out of that. I want to show you how to add the question, the code JMC major. And this is always this frustratingly slow, I will tell you that. All right, so there's question manager. For me, because I made the question, it just loads it. So you can add a question yourself to yours if you wanted to, or you can look at community questions. So this will show you the defaults. Because this is mine, it's just here. But I shared it to the community, so you should be able to do it. So go to community questions, and you can see a huge list. This is the one I shared, but for you, it'll show up in other shared. You're just going to have to scroll. Unfortunately, it does not separate it by our college or anything like that, but you can see it's kind of down on the list. And if you check it, and then you can say import selected questions. And it will import it, and then it'll be accessible. So you probably want to do that before the survey, but it'll let you go ahead and do that. So I'm going to return to quick summary, and that's kind of the basic on how you set up CATME. When you go to make the next activity, you can just click on the actual class, and then you'll load it, and you'll see it won't let you select team member survey. It'll just let you select the CATME survey. You may decide you want to pre-schedule, but you can just click on this part to go to the class and add more. So you'll notice I have the team maker survey and then all the evaluations that they did, and they give you information. And if you have any other questions, I'm happy to talk to you about it.